Welcome back to another episode of Elevate Your Grind brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales, and it is our first interview of the week. Thank you so much for everybody for watching the shows last week. Really enjoyed those episodes. We did a preview episode for the Emerge Cannabis Conference, which is going on today, tomorrow, and I believe Thursday with Charles Warner. And then we had Jeremy Gutveg from VitaCan. It was an awesome conversation. Unfortunately, Tom from Cocoon had to cancel on us. He had an emergency trip up north, but of course, we will get him back on the show. Great recorded content, youtube.com/elevate your grind. You can always check out our old shows there. If you are not able to watch this entire episode, you obviously can check it out next week on YouTube/elevate your grind, or you'll be able to find it on any of our audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Stitcher, etc. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts. So really excited about today's guest. The guest today has a device that really fits in line with how I believe the future of the cannabis market is going to come about, or really how it's going to operate. So I'm excited to talk to him, but a few notes before we get into that. So it has been announced February 5th, we are having our annual C Lab conference. I'm really excited about it. It's been since last September that we did it. Got to meet a lot of great folks. It was an amazing conference. We're going to do this down at the Sacred Space in Miami. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be socially distant. We're going to have some great panels. There's going to be a virtual component to it too. If you want more information on that, head to joinclab.com. Again, that is going to be February 5th, and you can get all the information you need at joinclab.com. For those of you that are looking for something to do tomorrow, I will be hosting the edibles panel for the Emerge conference. We've got an awesome lineup. Go to emergecanna.com. You can use my code Rosales VIP. We'll get you in at no cost. Really excited. We've got a lot of great things going on. So today's guest, I was introduced to him by one of our PR partners. Matteo Communications is a very big friend of the show. They bring a lot of people to us, and this device that this gentleman created or is banking his business on is absolutely incredible. His backstory is really cool. There's a lot of prior companies that I'd like to discuss with him. So without any further ado, please welcome the CEO of Omura, Mike Simpson. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Todd, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. So, dude, I love your device, right? Because, and I want to get into the backstory and everything else, but I'm just going to tell you why I love it, right? Because it is a whole flower product and it's discreet and it's portable and everything else. And I don't think enough people are focusing on doing something like that for whole flower, right? We see and we all have them with us, right? And that's weird, obviously pulling it out of my pocket. Everybody's focusing on these. You have the distillate vaporizers, you've got things like the G Pen Dash, but there's a lot of it that's focusing on concentrate and distillate. And candidly, when I use something like this for smoking a joint, it's a completely different experience. So you decided to focus on whole flower. I'm sure there's a ton of backstory behind why, but just let's start with the high level. What made you decide that whole flower was the way to go?
Thanks, Todd. This is a fantastic question. So I'll dial it back a little bit. I was working in the tobacco industry for 15 years, and I was working on what they call next generation or harm reduction technology. So basically working on vaporizers and heat not burn technology has been my kind of lifeblood for a long time. I stopped smoking cigarettes to heat not burn tobacco. I've done a lot in this space. I was living in Tokyo for 10 years, developing new technologies for the tobacco industry in this space. So from a different parallel perspective, I knew heat not burn was actually emerging in big tobacco. I moved over to California 8 years ago to research the cannabis space on behalf of big tobacco. And I really understood how important heat not burn was for the cannabis plant. It's so rich in oils and terpenes that heating up rather than combusting it is an incredibly it's an efficacious, healthy way to consume cannabis that still gives you the full entourage effect. So that's the broad background of why I realized that using heat not burn was going to be the future, or in my opinion, the future of whole flower cannabis.
Well, I definitely want to dig into that more. And for some reason, this show has the way that I run the timeline in the show is like one of those movies where they start with the heist, and then all of a sudden, right before the cops show up, they circle all the way back to 2 years ago when they were planning the heist, right? So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go into your background. So, I mean, looking at your LinkedIn, the earliest gig that I can see you have is got to be awesome. You were working in design for Lego of all places. I mean, when you're growing up as a kid and they interview you as a child and they say, "Where do you want to, work when you grow up?" I imagine Lego is one of those companies. So I know this is a cannabis podcast, but I've got to ask, how is it working for a company like Lego? I mean, do you design, how does it even work? Do you design the whole product and then reverse engineer the little pieces that go in it? I'm sure your job was a lot higher level than the specific products themselves, but talk to us about the experience with Lego.
It's a great question. I hadn't realized you'd done your background on me there, all the way to LinkedIn at least.
I've got a whole sheet of
Oh,
questions, my friend.
good, good. So yeah, I mean, obviously, every child growing up loves Lego, and I don't know if people dream to be a Lego designer, but when I finished my first degree in industrial design, Lego were looking around the exhibitions for new talent, essentially, and they offered me a job. And initially, I thought, Lego, it's been designed. You know, why would you want to get another designer? You know, and I was a bit naive. You know, I was looking for high flying, doing something else. But I started working with Lego, and it turned out to be literally a dream job, because not only was I designing Lego, I was actually called what they call a provocateur. It was my job to travel the world on expenses and get research buying toys in different countries. So we traveled all the way through Europe. We bought a bus and traveled from Denmark through to Italy. I spent 2 months living in Japan researching toys in Japan, and then I traveled around the US researching toys in America. You know, you couldn't get better than that. And then I ended up setting a design office up for Lego in Tokyo, where I employed the Japanese manga artists and designers and model builders, because I'd convinced Lego after my global tour that you can design toys in Japan with a global perspective because of their attention to detail. The truth is, I'd fallen in love with Japan after I'd visited there. So we came up with Lego's #1 brand at the time, called Exoforce, and then transitioned to my next life. Lego wanted to bring me back to Europe, and I didn't want to leave Japan, so I said thanks and goodbye.
Dude, that is awesome. I mean, I can imagine the conversations you're having with people. Oh, it's a late night in the office. I got to put together the Ninja Turtle sewer set. Obviously I joke, but that's an awesome job. So I know that you have a deep background in design, which I think is, for someone who's going to be putting out products, is very important, right? And I think that goes back to some of the lessons that Steve Jobs talked about, when you read his books and everything else, that, form and functionality, they're inverse, but the reason that Mac took off is because it looked cool, right? The Mac computers, and everybody's ripping off the Mac designs now. So when it comes to design, I think part of it is not only does it have to function, but it has to look cool. So I imagine, fast forwarding all the way now to the vaporizer device that you have, and I don't want to call it a vaporizer because I know it's not doing that, but I imagine a lot of your background in design led to making something that was cool. So not only that, you went on after Lego, you actually had your own toy company for a little bit, or at least consulting in the toy industry. It was called
Mhm.
what, J Kid?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Very cool. So you just love playing with toys at this point. You just didn't want to grow up, huh?
Well, as you'll notice, I had this parallel life or parallel existence. I always had toys and tobacco in my life, so a little bit of a yin and yang story there. But you are totally right. I think when I first bought my first Mac, it wasn't necessarily beautiful at the time, but what I did notice immediately, it started up just with a little logo in the screen, and it wasn't streaming data up there with syntax errors and all of this booting up stuff
Yeah.
Microsoft used to give you. So yes, looks are very important, but the functionality is obviously so much more important in my mind. And actually, going into the toy company JKid, we actually had a philosophy where we don't use buttons. We never used to have a button on a single product that we designed. We created the test tube aliens, which was our biggest hit, and it was the world's first web interactive toy. And it was born in an egg, and it dissolved in a test tube, and it grew, and it had a computer brain that you could hold up to the computer screen and put it into a coma and ask it questions. It was pretty bizarre, but we were all over user interface essentially, which actually takes us all the way to our newest product. It's the Series X. I will come into it in more detail, but it doesn't have a button. We intentionally give it no button. You put a stick in and it starts automatically. So it's easily the most seamless user interface possible.
That's really cool. So we'll fast forward a little bit. Not that I want to brush over your history, but obviously, the people watching the show want to learn more about the cannabis stuff. So you're working for, if I recall correctly, British and American Tobacco, and they task you with researching the cannabis industry. So you're just the king of getting awesome jobs. What happens then, right? What was the intention of evaluating the cannabis industry for them? Was it to see the threat levels? Was it to see the innovation? Or was it just for them to find an entryway into the marketplace?
Brilliant question. So I think it was probably multifaceted. I think information and intelligence, broadly speaking, obviously, if you're a company based in a different country, you want to know what's happening on the ground in an industry, a parallel industry like cannabis. So I was working with BAT to research, basically all the trends in the space, the technologies in the space. Could these technologies be applicable for tobacco potentially? And a lot of other things, including generation of new intellectual property of obviously which I can't share with you. But it was throughout that process that I actually realized, well, obviously it was my whole learning curve, learning about the cannabis plant, but realized, how valuable a plant it was, and realized what everybody else is knowing now as well about the crime almost of making it illegal for so long and depriving people from this medicine. I learned how powerful cannabis was, not as a recreational drug but as a medicinal opportunity basically. And then I also learned about how great it was for heat not burn. I seen all the devices on the market, like Stores and Bickle devices and the packs, and it was my job to take a suitcase full of devices to the UK every 3 months to give a download of all of the technologies I'd bought. My job gets better. Yeah? So I'm basically showing all of these new technologies, and I'm stripping them all up down, learning about this heat not burn technology that had been developed in the cannabis space. And I realized at that stage that the heat not burn in tobacco, a product called the IQOS by Philip Morris, it stands for I Quit Ordinary Smoking. It had been launched in Japan when I was there. It took 20% of the Japanese cigarette market. It was launched in Europe. It was now in 50 odd countries. And it was just about to be launched in the US. So I seen this technology in heat not burn for the tobacco industry about to hit the US. I had all of this knowledge from the cannabis space and how efficacious and desirable heat not burn was in cannabis. And I knew, there was a solid opportunity there to make a clean, convenient product in the cannabis space, which could be, as broadly adopted as a product like in the tobacco space, i.e., mainstream consumer product.
Very cool. So I want to get into the product itself now because, as I mentioned in the introduction here, and one of the things I did today is I moderated the beverages panel for the Emerge conference. And the reason I really like that panel is because when I look at the greater cannabis industry, um, and we have general consumers coming into this industry, not former smokers, not legacy cannabis consumers, but the general public, I think that beverages are going to be a much bigger category because they mimic traditional delivery mechanisms, but realistically, because they don't smell and they don't smoke, right? And that's one of the things that I've looked at is when we look at cannabis's general adoption, if federal legalization happened tomorrow, and all of a sudden everyone's like, you can smoke weed wherever you want, restaurants, whatever, you can have consumption lounges. I don't think that joints and bongs and all the other things are going to be the main delivery mechanism of consuming in public because it's invasive. And this country has fought, and other countries have fought very hard to remove smoke out of public places. Of course, it was cigarette smoke, but I don't think they're in a rush to put it back. So, what we see in cannabis is we see a ton of these, and there's such a ton of focus on it. I remember what led me to this. Is my wife does not smoke. She is fine with me doing it. She doesn't care, but she doesn't want me to smell like it, right? So we actually had some family come in to stay with us, and she's like, I don't want you smelling like cannabis, right? So a friend brought me one of these. I hit it. I'm like, this is great. This is going to be amazing. I went out and bought a bunch of them, but the more and more I used it, it wasn't the same effect. I didn't get what I was looking for when I would consume a joint or something else like that, right? So, I've tried a lot of the whole flower vaporizers and everything else, and most of the time, I'm the guy who ends up turning it up as high as it can and ends up igniting it. I'm basically smoking it out of the vaporizer anyway. So to me, I've been doing what you did for British American Tobacco, but for free for my own knowledge, right? Trying and testing out all these devices. And of course, it's not cheap, but I'm excited to talk about your product. And I really want to understand the heat not burn aspect of it compared to what we see as vaporizers. Because for the longest time, at least to me, I feel like I've been sold the vaporizer is supposed to be heat not burn, but I'm learning that that's not the actual truth. So if you can kind of help us all understand that a little bit. I know this was very long-winded, but this is really why I want to understand the heat not burn technology and the advantages of it, because I see so many.
Oh, thanks very much, Todd. It is a shame your question was too long because my mind's off on a dozen different tangents to answer various parts of that question. I mean, firstly, I think it's very interesting that you talk about the technology in the vaporizers that you have there, because most of these technologies actually transitioned from the tobacco industry anyway. The technology used in the vaporizers that you're talking about came from e-cigarettes originally. So this is actually, one of the reasons that heat not burn, I believe, will be successful is because, the industry such as large as big tobacco has got, it's got a lot of power globally, basically, to influence people, to creating new rituals. So this is one of the reasons heat not burn, I believe, in cannabis is going to be successful, because there is a parallel industry trailblazing it and throwing a lot of marketing dollars at it. So it does actually help that people are familiar with the ritual. Because when I go to anywhere in Asia or Europe and I show them my product, they immediately say, "Oh, that's like IQOS for cannabis." But in the US, because IQOS hasn't been, or there isn't a big tobacco solution available for the consumers, they're not familiar with this whole ritual of heat not burn, certainly in a stick format. So it's interesting, I said there's dozens of devices out there. There's actually nearly 200 devices that use heat not burn for cannabis.
Wow.
And like the PAX 3, for example, I believe that's sold over 1 million units in that single device. I'm absolutely sure it has. So if you think about the amount of products in the market, so there's literally tens of millions of users using heat not burn in cannabis already, which that goes to show how popular method of consumption it is. That said, each and every device on the market at the moment involves a consumer buying some flour, grinding the flour, as you well know, filling an oven with flour, and obviously there's a lot of variability in all of those processes already. Then you select an incremental temperature, which can leave the consumer a little confused. As you said, you turn up to the max and you burn it.
Yep.
Then you use a mouthpiece every time. And then you need to clean it out with this little kind of metal spatula or a brush. And then every 10 or 15 times you use rubbing alcohol because of the buildup of residue inside the mouthpiece and other parts of the device. That process is mind blowing. Some people call it a ritual, but for me, that's definitely a process. I realized,
hands down, it's a process, 100%. And I don't mean to interrupt you there, but you're looking at the guy who's bought everything on the market and still goes back to rolling papers and filters, because what I'll do is I'll sit down on a Sunday, roll a bunch of them, and then I have them for the week. And for me, I can just go and pick them. And I think this is where you're going with it, but it is a process, right? I think for cannabis consumers, it is a ritual, the traditional ones, but we're talking about general public and trying to pull them into the space. So I apologize for that. Go on.
no, it's so relevant. It's so relevant. I realized if you wanted to take this product, or heat not burn especially, mainstream, then you needed to eliminate all of those pain points. So, we, if you don't mind showing my product there, the
Not at
product
all.
comes, nicely in a pack like cigarettes almost.
That's very
Um,
cool.
the sticks themselves are already pre-filled with the cannabis or the hemp CBD. So basically now we've already eliminated the having to buy flour, grind flour, and fill an oven. It's simply already pre-packed with an exact dose. Then instead of selecting an incremental temperature, which can confuse the user, you simply put the stick inside the device and it starts automatically. So the user interface is seamless. And then you just use the stick as a mouthpiece. So you draw on the stick and you pull all the cannabinoids and terpenes out. This particular device, the new one, actually boils off 99% of the cannabinoids, so it's extremely efficient. And then after your session's finished, you simply remove the stick and throw it in the trash. It's biodegradable, so you don't need to do any of that cleaning. There's no buildup of residue, so there's no long-term in-depth cleaning, and it's just a seamless process, basically.
Dude, so to me, you literally took this, right, and unscrew this, and you essentially are selling me a pack of these with whole flour in them, and your device is this, right? You've taken this and you've done it for the whole flour smoker. That's incredible. I wish I lived out in California to try it in the THC format, but hopefully we can get you in the stores in Florida soon enough, man. That's my problem about doing this show in a state to where I don't have all these awesome devices. What is that container made out of? Is that like just like a paper, not paper, obviously, but just kind of like a
It's literally rainforest friendly paper, totally biodegradable. So whilst it is similar to a cartridge of sorts, it's more similar to a paper straw. It's literally a paper tube and whole flower, either cannabis or hemp CBD. So there's nothing artificial added. It's it goes back to the earth. Very sustainable.
very cool, man. So did you work with similar devices to this in the tobacco industry and it was just repurposed for cannabis, or was this device designed for cannabis from the ground up?
Pretty much from the ground up, if I was quite honest. It was obviously, it's quite complex. It's interesting, from big tobacco they designed systems, and this ICOR system that I speak of, it actually cost Philip Morris $4 billion to develop. So that's a very large chunk of R&D cash. I'd been lucky enough to work in the tobacco industry, so I had more knowledge about kind of consumer preferences and like the stick format and what could be desirable. So the whole kind of process is kind of a mindset potentially from that side of the industry. That said, the amount of devices that have been developed for the cannabis industry, there's a plethora of different technologies and little kind of nuances and innovations in there. And I've just been privy to be able to understand all of the technologies that are out there. So essentially, we chose convection technology, which was going to be the best method for heating a stick like ours, because if we use conduction, we'd be heating the stick sides up more. So we use convection, so we just pull hot air through the stick, which is perfect for boiling off all the cannabinoids, essentially.
I really appreciate you being so gentle as you're explaining this, because even a simpleton like me can understand the science behind it. So I appreciate that very much. But to me, this looks very much like a consumer device, right? Are you so you're these are not being sold kind of direct to consumer like a PAX 3 or like a G Pen Dash where they can ground up and do that, or do you have the option of people filling their own sticks as well? Or what market are you focused on?
Well, from buying the products, you can buy them from obviously retail stores, or you can buy them from our website as well. But regarding the consumables, like the ones I've just shown you, for example, we have a variety of different. There's a couple of different models. There's a THC model, which are available in dispensaries. Our company's not a touching plant company, so we don't have a cannabis license. So we essentially sell the technology or the empty packaging to cannabis companies who fill it in their own facility. And we have these cannabis brands. This is Tradecraft that we're launching with right now. We have a number of other different brands already on the shelf, like Sweetwater Farms. Then we also have a couple of brands out there of our own, which are actually hemp CBD brands. We have this Libertine brand, and then we have Oriole brand as well. But what we don't sell empty sticks to the consumer. We want to provide them with a finished solution. The type of the consumer that we're addressing, we know they want this seamless, convenient, pre-filled experience. If we try to sell empty sticks, then we'd be going back a step to people who like that ritual of either rolling or grinding or filling. And we wanted to take the extra, few steps and go the extra mile and create this new sophisticated, kind of seamless experience.
Well, I tend to ask my questions very selfishly, and in my head, it's like, well, the only way I'm going to get my hands on it if he sells empty sticks, and I fill them myself down here in Florida. I guess we're going to have to try to make some introductions to the MMTCs down here so they can just license your product. We can just do it that way so I can get my hands on one. But it looks like an absolutely amazing product as far as from a convenience standpoint. As far as the actual process of using it, put it in. I saw something. It's about a 3-minute session. What's the experience like? Is it very similar to taking a hit off of a joint? Is there a lingering smell? Is there clouds of smoke? Talk to us about the improvements you've made on the experience there.
Yeah, brilliant. So the experience itself, it wouldn't be too dissimilar to using like a PAX or a Volcano, but obviously not as heavy as a Volcano, because that's a very large capacity. There's no smoke because there's no combustion. All that comes off when you heat and not burn is the cannabinoids and terpenes. So there's a very light wisp of vapor. You actually find if you pull the vapor in and you inhale it deep, you exhale very little, almost none. But if you pull it into your mouth, like I will here, you can see like a
Yeah.
small visible amount of vapor. if I pull that into my lungs, I actually retain it. So it's the efficacy of using vaporizer like this. It means you keep the vast majority of the cannabinoids or the medicine inside. So on top of that, when I breathe very little out, it means there's very little odor. So there's a very little smell in the air, and it dissipates very fast as well. So it's very hygienic, very clean, very effective as well.
Would you make the argument that you're actually getting more of the full effect from the strain, and you're going to get more of the true effects from the strain as they're described by leveraging this instead of smoking a joint and igniting it?
I would make that argument actually. A lot of the time when you have a joint, a lot of it literally goes up in smoke. It's either burning away in the ashtray, or if you're passing it around, it's burning away. Also, as you can imagine, if you breathe out a cloud of smoke, there's such a large volume. That volume of smoke which leaves the body hadn't been kind of retained by the lungs. It's totally full of cannabinoids and terpenes. The lungs don't choose the cannabinoids and let the smoke out. They're all going away with the smoke as well. So people can get high off secondhand smoke. But when you use one of our sticks, or if you use heat not burn for cannabis, you retain the majority of the cannabinoids. So the efficacy is actually, we believe, double that of smoking. We haven't done any lab trials yet, although we intend to shortly. But yeah, essentially you get a lot more for your money when you use heat not burn. Also, this is one of the few products you can get the full entourage effect with still.
Very cool. And the last question I've got to ask about this, just because I saw my wife actually like this video, maybe because I was talking about her before, but she's going to be very interested to know am I going to smell after using the product? And I know when I smoke a joint, I'm going to smell for 2 hours. My fingers are going to smell like it. I imagine that it is still cannabis and has a sting to it, if you will. But I imagine that if there is a smell, it doesn't last nearly as long as igniting the products.
No, it's very light. You actually, from a user experience, you can taste the strain, you taste the terpenes, so it actually tastes, I would believe, good. When you set fire to something, you mask the flavor. Obviously the smell and the taste of the smoke masks the flavor of the particular strain. So there is a smell. You can smell it lightly, but it's no stronger than like using a vape pen like you use now. And obviously the cloud is an awful lot smaller as well, so it dissipates faster. So I believe you'll smell less by using a device like ours, compared to either using a vape pen, definitely, than smoking a joint or a bong.
Well, if you need to do any research, I will certainly sign up for those trials. But let's look at the business now. So, as much as I love alternative consumption methods, not that this one is really too far out there. When I talk to a lot of the beverages companies, or even some of the sophisticated vaporizer companies, there comes a level of education that needs to be done with your marketing, right? You even said it yourself when you show it to people, overseas, especially in Asia, that they have something similar to this for tobacco, whereas here we don't, right? So do you find that there is, with your marketing and with your distribution, that there is a level of education that you need to provide both the bud tenders and the end consumers to understand your product?
Yeah, great question. And you are totally right. At the moment, there is a heavier lift at the marketing level. We need to educate bud tenders. We also put people in stores doing PADs to educate the consumers as well. So there is a heavier lift. That said, the IQOS device has actually now been authorized by the FDA to be marketed as a reduced exposure product. So Philip Morris will be rolling their IQOS device out through the US. So we're going to see, a similar format in the tobacco industry throughout the US over the next year anyway, I believe. So this will actually help kind of trailblaze, this consumer awareness for this new ritual for us.
Very cool, man. Well, you guys seem to be getting off to a great start. It's a phenomenal product. I'd love to, see some of the educational content that you have, because I think it's great, and I think more people need to learn about this. But obviously, you don't need me to tell you, because you secured an awesome funding round from someone we know very well, Bruce Linton. I mean, I know he wasn't the entire check, but raised $5 million, and now you have Bruce Linton as part of your company. I mean, that's got to be exciting going forward, to have, someone who is recognized as one of the first major CEOs of a cannabis company backing you guys.
No, it's brilliant. I speak with Bruce weekly. We have a good conversation about where the company's at. He makes recommendations and gives strategic advice to us, but he introduces us to many people at very high levels in other companies. basically Bruce believes in Omura, our technology and our story, and obviously he believes we're going places. So yeah, it's phenomenal, a great opportunity to be working with him.
Cool. What does the future look like for you guys? I imagine, I imagine I saw that you guys are in Massachusetts, obviously in California. I'm not sure what other markets that you're in. Actually, you partner with a friend of mine out in Massachusetts in Revolutionary Clinics. I'm not sure if you know
Okay.
Ryan Anson. So Ryan
Ryan,
is a
Ryan,
friend of our family. Yeah.
brilliant.
So really excited to see you guys in Massachusetts there with Ryan and this team. What does the future look like for you? Are you looking to expand into other states? Are you looking to get more market share in the states that you're in? I'm just curious about your approach to the market.
Yeah, great question. It's a little bit of anything and everything, i.e. we're going to be expanding and grabbing more retail territory in the states that we're already in. We're getting more flower brands in the states that we're already in coming to the table, but we're also launching in new states as well. You'll be interested to know we've already submitted to the DOH in Florida, as we have in other states as well. So we're going to be out in a number of other states. Certainly, we're penned for another 4 or 5 states in the first quarter of 2021. And again, we're not a cannabis company. We own the technology behind the platform, so we are actively looking for opportunities, throughout the cannabis space, throughout the hemp CBD space, and also throughout other countries around the world as well, because we believe this is a technology that we can scale, across the globe, basically.
Very cool. Let's actually touch on the hemp CBD side of things. So that's really interesting to me because all of a sudden hemp smokables became a thing. I never thought that was going to be a thing. Actually, for a short period of time, I worked for a CBD company that functioned like a nutraceutical company. They mixed herbs in with the CBD, and they had some great formulas in the form of tinctures, solves, teas, things like that. And they wanted to come out with a hemp pre-roll that had herbs and stuff in it. And I just go, why? In my opinion, and I'm not obviously the smartest person in the world, but if someone's using it for a health and wellness product, they're probably not a smoker, right? So to get somebody to light
Mhm.
up a hemp joint is a stretch, right? I had Shada Tarabi on the show. She lives in Texas, right? And I had a joke with her saying, "You guys have a fake cannabis industry in Texas because it's not legal, and they're very big on the smokable joints there." But having said that, looking at your product, I kind of see that removes a step from people consuming it that way by inhaling CBD versus taking it
Mhm.
orally or putting it on their skin or something like that. Do you think that this plays more into the health and wellness factor that people can consume CBD, and we'll call it the traditional method that it's been consumed by cannabis consumers, and not have to worry about lighting up something to do it?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I've seen it as well over the last year, especially the amount of whole flower CBD available throughout either smoke shops, vape shops, and or obviously CBD wellness stores as well. It's phenomenal. There's literally thousands of retail points where you can buy whole flower now as well. But you're correct. Most people are obviously either rolling it in a joint and setting fire to it, and maybe a handful of people are using it in like their heat not burn devices. But we've really got an opportunity now to give them a healthier method of consuming it without all of the combustion. I said the two brands we have in the hemp CBD space is Libertine, and this is more of a male orientated product. It's more about don't smoke cigarettes, that stuff's over. How about using hemp CBD instead? And then we have what you're referring to is a brand we call Oriole, which is a health and wellness brand. This is more kind of female oriented in its kind of marketing, but we have a single strain hemp CBD, and then this is all single strain hemp CBD, but we've actually cut in around 20% of chamomile in this one, 20% of peppermint, 20% of lavender. So you also get that kind of subtle undertone of the flavors of the natural herb as well. So yeah, we believe that the vapable hemp CBD flower market, can be huge. We're also doing white labeling for third parties. We've got a couple of other brands on already, and we're in discussions with a number of larger partners. We're also in discussions with a lot of smoke shop, vape shops, and CBD chain stores throughout the US. So we think this is an opportunity where we can get in, potentially even the convenience stores. That we're obviously in pharmacies and convenience stores, or some of these products are already. So yes, it's a huge opportunity, and I think the interesting thing about inhalation of the vapor, it is very efficacious. You can feel it as soon as you take it. the bioavailability of the vapor, i.e., the way the body responds to it, is it's almost instantaneous. So it's a really nice way to take it compared to a tincture where you question when the effect happened or did it happen. You really feel the multitude of cannabinoids in there, so you get the full spectrum effect when you vape it like this. Also, not to mention the amount of minor cannabinoids in there as well. We're seeing CBN and CBG and all sorts of other cannabinoids that people are now looking at as well. And this is a great method to be able to consume them.
Dude, this is incredible. I'm really a big fan of this device and really what it does for the plant. We focused a lot on the US market right now. Or do you guys look international? Are you working with any international cannabis companies at this point? Or when I say international, in other countries, obviously nobody's really international yet, but
Well, we're actually doing quite a lot around the world. We're fending off kind of interest from Australia and New Zealand. We've got a number of different relationships and partnerships happening across Europe as well, in different industries, whether it be cannabis, medical, or whether it be hemp CBD. We've got interest from all, and we've also got a lot of deep conversations with Canada as well. So, at the moment we're a small team, so we're just trying to succeed very well in the US. We're trying to be strategic about our growth. But yeah, the opportunities in around the world are huge.
and Mike, it sounds great, and I really like what you're doing to the cannabis industry here. I don't ask this of my guests that often, but just with the background, coming from the tobacco space, besides the fact that you were tasked with analyzing the space for British American Tobacco, what attracted you to this space? I mean, was this a space that you wanted to work in, or was it just an opportunity that you saw?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of different things. It was being the right person in the right place at the right time. I'd got 15 years of experience in big tobacco. I was studying cannabis in California. The legislation was changing rapidly. It felt like the stars were aligning. Previously, I had never thought that I'd be, the owner of a cannabis technology. But as I got to learn more about the industry and the people in the industry, I realized, how close an industry it was, and how kind of kind and friendly people were in the cannabis industry compared to some other industries. So there's other reasons to get in there as well. Clearly, it's going to be a huge financial opportunity. The whole cannabis industry. That, of course, it is alluring, but it's a mixture of all of those things. I think the reality is, and the most the coldest reality was, I could see the technologies coming. I could see this stars aligning. And I actually thought, if I don't create this opportunity, I'll spend the rest of my life looking back and regretting it because somebody else will. So it was being the right person at the right time, basically, in the right place.
Well, I'm glad that you were the right person at the right time in the right place. I'm excited to try it. I'm glad that you are looking at Florida. Maybe I can twist your arm after this conversation. We talk about who's going to be the first one to adopt the technology. So you just talked about, looking back, if you didn't do it, somebody else might have, right? Or you would have regretted not
Mhm.
doing it. When we look at the future, what most excites you about the opportunity in front of you and just about this industry in general?
Uh, I think this is too big a question almost. Obviously,
Of
my
course it is.
my focus is also on building Omura, so I'm hugely excited about what we can do with this company and this technology, and how we can influence the lives of people around the world. In a positive way, outside of the business side of it. This is a huge opportunity. But that answer is coupled in with just seeing how the world's dominoes topple, seeing what's happened in the US and countries around. It's clear to everybody that as they say, the genie's out the bottle. This thing's only traveling in one direction. It's just going to be really interesting to watch as the world evolves and allows legalization of this beautiful plant around the world. It's going to be very, very exciting, and it's going to happen very fast. I think we all know that the acceleration of the legislative trends is also gaining momentum. So it's all happening in the next few years, basically.
No, it's very exciting. I hope you're right. I hope it does happen quickly. I hope it's done right. My biggest fear, at least in this country, is that we've done such a good job. I don't want to say great job, but at the state level, we have 33 case studies of how you could potentially do it, right? And I wouldn't say there's a definitive model state yet, but at least we can take the best from everybody. My fear is that the federal government legalizes it at the federal level and it just throws a monkey wrench in interstate commerce and what the states are doing, because our federal government is known for being perfect. Obviously, they're not going to mess that up. But that's my biggest fear when people talk about federal legalization is the legalization is one thing, the implementation, the regulation is another, right? And I think that's what we need to be concerned about. But that's just my thought. I think you're probably more involved in that, but do you see that being an issue?
Yeah, totally. I think it's a good case of be careful what you wish for. I think people think they want federal legalization, but that will come at with a price. I think decriminalization and expungement, of criminal records is a really important first step. I think the Safe Banking Act is an incredible important step for the companies in this space as well. But I think as far as full federal legalization goes, I think you're completely correct. I think when the FDA gets involved, it's really going to reshape the industry into something that we may not recognize. If you look at what happened in the e-cigarette industry recently, that's I wouldn't say it's all but gone, but regrettably now the only players that can really afford to play in that space are like people like big tobacco. So FDA, with all their best intentions, ends up putting hundreds of thousands or certainly tens of thousands of small businesses out of business because they can't afford to comply with the regulations. And I think there's going to be some big issues within the cannabis sector as well when the FDA gets involved. Again, with the best intentions, but again, this will also lead a lot of the market to big business, big alcohol, big pharma, big tobacco.
My platform's not big enough to share my opinion on what the federal government's doing to small businesses in general, at least this year. So we'll skip that topic. But Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I'm excited, for the device to hopefully come to Florida soon. If the world opens up, I can certainly travel to go get some. But the packaging, the branding on your own internal brands, the device looks very nice. The design is incredible. I even loved, the pack that you have with all the sticks in it. It's all great. So before we let you go, man, what else have we not touched on that we should talk about?
I think you covered most of it off. Maybe I didn't mention the fact that we've just launched this new Series X device. I actually believe that not only is it the most functional and efficacious product in the market, but it's also the best looking product in the market as well. We've been very fortunate to work with a famous industrial designer called Michael Young. He's worked in many different industries, and he's designed the external appearance along with our internal team for the engineering, of course, of this product.
Is that base the charger?
That's right. It's got a charging dock, so it charges in the dock all the time. But you can also take it out of the dock and charge it with a USB-C to the device as well. If anyone's seen our original S1 device, we've made a lot of changes and a lot of improvements with the Series X. Just launched last week. We're going to be seeing this in the press a lot over the next few weeks.
Very cool. Well, I'm honored to be part of that tour. Thank you again. And this time before we let you go, let's get the website out there, any social media, all the plugs.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Omura.com, simple. We're Omura on Instagram as well. You can get in contact with us through the website. Pretty straightforward. That's it. Thanks to everyone on the team for getting us where we are. Thanks, Todd, for a great interview. I really appreciate it.
No, the honor was all mine. Thank you very much. And any cannabis brands that are watching this show, reach out. I want to try your product in the Omura. I'm not going to do it if it's not in it. Maybe I will. I don't know. But definitely reach out. I think it's a great device. I love the fact that it is very public friendly. I'm excited to try it. And so thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody at home. Again, this has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind. Check us out February 5th, annual C-Lab conference. That's at joinclab.com. If you're just tuning into the show or if you missed any part of it, you can see it next week on YouTube at youtube.com/elevate your grind. We are going to be live at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow with Gia Kubrick from the Incredibles team. We're going to be talking about Incredibles and their edibles and them relaunching across the country. So really excited about that. And then we have Rebecca Allison from Surterra on Thursday. That's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern. Of course, all of our live episodes are right here at facebook.com/Cannabis Group. Tomorrow, check me out at the Emerge conference. It's going to be around 1:45 Eastern. So I will be hosting the edibles panel. That's emergecanada.com. And then if you're going to watch that conference, you might as well come to the C-Lab one in February. You can see it online or you can see it in person at Sacred Space Miami. Join CLab.com. Folks, we will see you tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. This has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind. We're out.